The wind howled across the alien desert, carrying dust and whispers of fear. The alien settlement stood silent, its tall towers glowing faintly under the pale twin moons. No one dared to speak loudly that night. Rumors had already spread like fear. A human was coming. Not a soldier, not a traitor, not an explorer, but a priest. The aliens could not understand it. A priest. What was a priest compared to warriors, ships, and weapons? To them, a priest was nothing more than a fragile man with prayers and soft words. Yet somehow, their leaders warned them to stay inside their homes. The girl, however, could not resist. She slipped out, her curious eyes searching for the stranger everyone feared, yet mocked. She saw him long before he reached the gates. Alone. Figure walking slowly through the desert. He carried no weapon, only a staff carved with strange symbols, and a small book tied to his side. His robe was plain, worn from travel, and his face calm, almost a calm. But there was something about his eyes. Even from a distance, the girl felt it in unsettling stillness. Like the silence before a storm, the guards at the gate raised their spears. "Stop, human," one of them shouted, his voice echoing against the stone walls. "This is holy ground. Outsiders are forbidden." The human priest stopped. He lifted his head and looked at them, not with fear, not with anger, but with the calmness of someone who had already seen this moment before. Slowly he raised his hand, not in threat, but in blessing. His lips moved, whispering words in a language the aliens did not know. The guards stiffened. Sudden chill ran through the air. Their spears, made of living metal, vibrated and bent slightly, as if bowing to an invisible force. One guard dropped his weapon in shock. The other staggered backward, gripping his chest. The girl's eyes widened. She had never seen their sacred weapons react like this, not even against enemy sorcery. The priest stepped forward again. Each step deliberate, slow, yet unstoppable. It was as if the desert itself cleared the path for him. Dust swirled away from his feet. His shadow stretched unnaturally long, even though the moons were high above. The girl followed quietly, hiding behind the stone pillars near the entrance. Her heart pounded. Who is this man? She thought. Why does he not fear us? Why do our warriors fear him? When the priest entered the city, the silence grew heavier. The alien people peeked from their windows. Others pulled their children close. Warriors gripped their weapons, unsure if they should attack, yet no one moved. The human priest walked through the center of the street, his staff clicking against the stone. His eyes fixed on the towering temple at the far end of the city. The temple was their most sacred place, built for their gods, guarded for centuries. Outsiders had been burned alive for merely approaching its steps, and yet the priest was heading straight for it. "Stop him," the commander shouted, finally breaking the silence. Dozens of alien soldiers rushed forward, their armor glowing, their blades sharp with energy. The girl gasped. No human could stand against them. Not even their strongest warriors dared to face the temple guard. But the priest did not flinch. He placed his staff into the ground, closed his eyes, and whispered a single word. The air cracked. A low hum spread across the square. The soldiers froze mid-step. Their glowing blades flickered and dimmed as though the power inside them had been swallowed by the night. The hum grew louder, shaking the ground beneath their feet. One by one, the soldiers fell to their knees, clutching their heads, unable to move forward. The people watching screamed. Some ran, some bowed, and some simply stood frozen in terror. The alien girl pressed her back against the pillar, her body trembling. She had never seen her people's warriors defeated without a single blow. The priest opened his eyes. For a brief moment they glowed faintly, not with fire, not with rage, but with something far worse, conviction. He walked past the fallen soldiers, his steps calm, his breathing steady. The girl whispered to herself, "This is impossible. You should not be able to do this." She felt torn. Every part of her wanted to run away, to hide from this nightmare in human form. But another part of her was drawn closer. She had to know who he was. She had to know why he came. The priest finally reached the base of the temple steps. He lifted his staff and tapped it against the first stone. The sound echoed unnaturally loud, like a drumbeat that shook the heart. He raised his eyes toward the towering entrance and spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the entire city. "I have come for the truth." The words rang like thunder. Windows shattered, fires dimmed, even the sky seemed to darken. The alien. Girl covered her ears, but the words still entered her mind, heavy and inescapable. For centuries, her people had believed their gods were untouchable, their temple unbreakable, their warriors unbeatable. And yet, a lone human priest had walked into their holy city with nothing but a book and a staff. And he was already tearing apart everything they thought was true. The girl's breath caught in her throat. For the first time in her life, she felt fear not of her gods, not of war, but of this human. And deep down, beneath the fear, a dangerous thought whispered in her heart, what if he is right? The city had not slept since the human priest arrived. Fear spread through every street like a poison. The temple bells rang again and again, calling the priestesses and high guardians to gather. Something had to be done. To the aliens, this was not just a man walking into their sacred land. This was blasphemy. It's an insult to their gods. But the human did not fight them. He did not run, did not raise his staff like a weapon. Instead, he stood calmly at the bottom of the temple steps, waiting as though he knew they would come to him. His silence was heavier than any threat. The alien girl had not returned home. She hid in the shadows near the temple, her eyes locked on the man who had turned their strongest warriors into trembling cowards. She wanted answers. She wanted to see what he would do next. The high priestess of the temple finally appeared. She was tall, draped in golden robes, her voice sharp as a blade. "Human," she shouted from the top of the steps. "You walk where no outsider may walk. You breathe air that is not yours to breathe. You dare bring your lies into our holy city." The priest lifted his head, his eyes calm, his face unreadable. "I come only for the truth," he said. The voice was soft, but it carried across the temple courtyard as if the walls themselves repeated his words. The high priestess's eyes narrowed. "Then you will face the trial of flames. No one outside our bloodline has survived it. If you live, we will hear your words. If you die, your bones will be cast into the desert." The crowd gasped. The trial of flames was a ritual feared even by the bravest of their own kind. It burned the soul, not the body. Warriors had gone mad inside its circle. Many never returned. To suggest a humane, fragile, untrained outsider should step into it was nothing less than a death sentence. The girl's heart raced. She wanted to shout, to warn him, but her voice caught in her throat. Would he refuse? Would he finally show fear? The priest nodded once. So be it. A shiver passed through the crowd. He had accepted without hesitation. The priestesses prepared. The circle. Flames of violet and silver rose from the carved stones, twisting like serpents. The air grew hot, pressing against the skin, heavy with unseen power. The circle hummed, live with ancient energy that had destroyed countless challengers. The human stepped inside without pause. The flames bent toward him, licking his robe, touching his staff, reaching for his skin. But he did not scream. He did not fall. Instead, he closed his eyes and opened the small book at his side. The girl leaned forward, barely breathing. She saw the words on the pages, written in a script she had never seen before. The priest began to read aloud. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but the flames reacted as if struck by a storm. They recoiled, twisting away from him. The circle, meant to devour his soul, seemed to shudder in pain. The glowing patterns carved into the ground cracked like dry earth, their light flickering wildly. The high priestess shouted, trying to strengthen the ritual. She raised her arms, chanting the ancient verses of her people. The other priestesses joined in, their voices echoing across the temple walls. The flames roared higher, brighter, stronger. But the human priest did not falter, kept reading, his voice steady, his words clear. Staff glowed faintly, the carvings shining like stars. His calm tone cut through the chaos like a blade. Through silk, the girl could hardly believe what she was seeing. She had watched powerful warriors collapse under the trial of flames in less than a minute. She had seen the ritual burn through chains and shields alike. Yet here stood a lone human, untouched, unbroken, commanding the flames with nothing but his voice. The crowd panicked. Some screamed that he was a demon, others fell to their knees, crying that he was a prophet. The temple itself seemed to tremble, dust falling from its ancient walls. The flames, once wild and uncontrollable, now circled the human-like loyal beasts. They did not burn him. They bowed to him. Finally, he stopped reading. He closed the book, lifted his eyes, and spoke 3 simple words. Your gods lie. The flames collapsed at his feet, vanishing into smoke. The circle was gone. The stones cracked, the carvings destroyed. For the first time in centuries, the trial of flames had been broken, not by strength, not by magic, but by a human priest's calm defiance. The high priestess staggered backward, her golden robes trembling. Her face was pale, her lips pressed, tight with fear. She had believed the ritual would destroy him. Now she saw her power crumble before a man who should have been powerless. The alien girl could not look away. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She whispered to herself, impossible. This is impossible. But deep inside, another thought clawed its way into her mind, a dangerous, forbidden thought. What if he speaks the truth? What if our gods really do lie? The human priest stepped out of the broken circle, his staff clicking softly against the stone. He looked up at the temple doors and then at the people watching him. His gaze was calm, steady, yet it carried a weight. Heavier than steel? Your gods demanded sacrifice, he said. I demand truth, and I will not leave until I find it. The words struck like lightning. The people fell silent, their fear now mixed with something else, doubt. The girl shivered, knew the world she grew up in had just changed forever, and she realized something even more terrifying. The nightmare had only just begun. The night after the broken ritual, the city did not sleep. Fires burned in the temple courtyard, not for light, but for fear. The trial of flames had been destroyed, something no alien could ever imagine. The story spread through every street, every home, every corner. People whispered in hushed voices, afraid their gods might punish them for even speaking of it. But no one could stay silent. The words repeated again and again. The human priest broke the ritual. He commanded the flames. He said, our gods lie. First, many laughed, saying it was a trick. But those who had seen it with their own eyes knew the truth. They had seen the flames bend like servants. They had heard his voice drown out the chants of their priestesses. The lie was no longer easy to ignore. The alien girl lay awake in her small chamber, her heart restless. She had watched everything. She had felt the fire of the ritual tremble in fear before the human. And his words still echoed in her mind. Your gods lie. She wanted to shut them out, but she could not. Her family begged her not to speak of it. Forget him, her mother whispered. Do not let his poison reach your mind. But the girl could not forget. Something inside her had changed. At dawn, the markets filled with uneasy chatter. Traders, workers, and soldiers all spoke of the human priest. Some called him a false prophet sent to destroy them. Others whispered that perhaps he was chosen by the true gods, the ones hidden from them. Every whisper spread like fire, and every rumor added to the fear. The girl walked through the market, pretending to buy bread, but her ears stayed sharp. She heard the words again and again. He made the guards fall with no weapon, but the flames bent before him. He seeks the temple's heart. He will destroy us all. She shivered. The whispers were no longer just about fear. They were about power. And power always changed everything. Meanwhile, the human priest moved silently through the city. He did not hide, did not flee. Walked openly, staff in hand, book at his side. Wherever he went, people fell silent. Some bowed in confusion, some spat in anger, and some simply stared, too afraid to act. But no one dared to stop him. A group of warriors finally tried. In the middle of the day, As the priest walked past the fountain, 5 armored soldiers blocked his path. Their leader shouted, "Leave our city, human. If you take one more step, we will cut you down." The crowd gathered, holding their breath. The priest did not draw back. He looked at them with calm eyes and said, "Strike me, if your hearts are clean." The words hung in the air like chains. The leader raised his blade, but his arm shook violently. His face twisted in fear. He tried again, but his knees buckled. Forcing him to the ground, the others followed, collapsing one by one as if crushed by an unseen weight. The crowd gasped. None of the soldiers had been touched. Not one blow had been struck. And yet the human had defeated them with nothing but words. The girl stood among the crowd, her hands trembling. She could not look away. She saw something no one else dared to admit. The human priest did not simply have power, he was power. The whispers grew stronger that night. Some said he was the destroyer promised in old prophecies. Some claimed he was the hand of death, a nightmare made flesh. Others whispered in secret that he was the savior who would tear down the chains of their false gods. The alien leaders were terrified. In the temple, the high priestess gathered with the council of elders. Their faces were pale, their voices sharp with panic. "He undermines the gods. He weakens our warriors. If the people believe him, we lose everything." Argued, desperate, until one voice cut through the noise. "Then let us silence him before he reaches the temple's heart." But even they hesitated. If their strongest ritual failed, what else could destroy him? The girl did not know why her steps carried her closer to him. That night, when the streets were quiet, she followed the priest in secret. He walked outside the city walls toward the ruins near the desert. She hid among the rocks watching. The priest knelt, placing his staff into the sand. He opened his book, whispering words once more. The air shimmered, the desert wind calming around him. His voice was low, steady, but powerful. The girl's heart pounded. She could not understand his words, but she felt them like they were echoing inside her soul. The sand around him shifted, forming patterns she had only seen in old scriptures. Symbols of light carved themselves into the earth, glowing softly. Before fading, she gasped, covering her mouth. He was not just powerful, he was rewriting their sacred texts in the sand. Without touching them, the priest lifted his eyes, as if he had always known she was there. His gaze met hers in the darkness. She froze. "You follow me?" he said softly, his voice calm. She stepped back, shaking. I wanted to know who you are." He studied her quietly, then closed his book. "Not who I am," he said, "but who your gods truly are. That is the truth you fear." The girl's knees weakened. She wanted to deny him, to scream that he was wrong. But deep inside, she knew she had already begun to believe him. The whispers in the city grew louder, each day. But the most dangerous whispers of all now lived inside her, his own heart. And she feared the day they would no longer be whispers, but truth. The temple bells rang before dawn, louder than ever before. Their heavy echoes rolled across the alien city, waking every family, every child, every soldier. The bells were not calling for worship, they were calling for war. The human priest had walked their streets untouched, had bent their strongest ritual, and had shaken their faith with 3 simple words: "Your gods lie." The council could no longer stay silent. It demanded action. The alien girl rose from her bed, her body weak from sleepless nights. She knew something was about to happen. Everyone knew. She rushed toward the temple, blending with the growing crowd. The air smelled of fear and smoke. Whispers filled the streets. They will crush him today. The gods themselves will strike him. Cannot stand against the High Council. But not everyone sounded certain. Some voices trembled, unsure if the gods had any strength left at all. When the girl reached the temple courtyard, she froze. The human priest stood at the center, waiting. He looked the same as always, calm, silent, staff in hand, book at his side. He did not prepare weapons, did not wear armor. It was as if he had walked into their storm with nothing but faith. The high priestess descended the temple steps, flanked by elders and armored guards. Her golden robe shimmered with power. The council behind her chanted, their voices shaking the air with authority. The guardians carried chains forged from the core of fallen stars, said to bind even the mightiest of spirits. The crowd pushed forward, hungry to see. Mothers held their children tight, elders whispered prayers, and soldiers waited for the order to strike. The girl hid among them, her eyes locked on the scene, her heart pounding. The high priestess raised her staff, her voice sharp and cold. Human, you are an intruder in our holy city. You have broken sacred law, mocked our gods, and poisoned our people. Today your lies end. Bow before us, and perhaps we will let you die swiftly. The priest lifted his gaze. His voice was calm, steady, carrying across the courtyard without effort. I bow to no false gods. I came for truth. If truth threatens your temple, then your temple is built on lies. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The boldness of his words struck harder than any weapon. The high priestess snarled. She slammed her staff into the stone floor. The ground cracked, light bursting from the cracks like rivers of fire. The chains of starlight leaped forward, wrapping around the human's arms and legs. The guards pulled with all their strength, anchoring him to the ground. For the first time, the girl held her breath. Was this it? Would the human finally fall? The Actizo? Priest lowered his head. He whispered something too soft for anyone to hear. Then, slowly, he lifted his eyes. His calm gaze burned brighter than the flames. The chains trembled. Cracks ran along their shining length. The guards strained, shouting, their muscles shaking, but the chains did not hold. With a single breath, the human priest raised his staff. The chains shattered into dust, scattering into the wind like ashes. The crowd screamed. Some fell to their knees, others fled in terror. The guards staggered backward, fear in their eyes. The high priestess herself froze, her hand shaking. The human priest spoke, his voice deep and unshaken. You bind with lies, I free with truth. Your chains mean nothing. The council elders tried to chant louder, summoning the power of their gods, but their voices wavered, weak compared to his. His words cut through theirs like thunder through rain. One elder collapsed mid-chant, blood pouring from his nose. Another clutched his chest, gasping for air. Their power, once feared, seemed powerless now. The alien girl's heart raced. She could not look away. She saw her people's strongest leaders crumble before a man with no army, no weapon, no thronely. Faith! The high priestess screamed, raising her staff again. A great wave of fire burst from its tip, a storm of holy flame meant to reduce the human to ash. The heat was unbearable. The crowd shielded their faces, but the human priest did not move. He tapped his staff against the ground once. The flames stopped midair, frozen in place. For a heartbeat, they hung like a wall of fire. Then, slowly, they turned, bending back toward the high priestess herself. She shrieked, throwing her arms forward to block it. The fire roared over her, consuming her golden robe. She fell to her knees, her crown of authority shattered, her staff broken in two. The courtyard fell into silence. The only sound was the calm echo of the priest's footsteps as he walked forward. Past the fallen leaders, past the crumbling chains. Once the fire turned against its master, he looked up at the towering temple doors, then back at the people. His voice rang clear. The gods you worship are no gods at all. They feed on your fear, they blind you with false light. But the truth cannot be chained. The truth cannot be burned. The people shook. Some wept, others bowed, and some still screamed for their gods to strike him down. But no strike came. The sky above remained silent. The alien girl pressed her hand against her chest, her breath sharp. Her whole life had been built on the strength of the temple, on the fire of the priestess, on the power of their gods. And now, all of it had been torn apart in front of her eyes. She whispered to herself, barely audible, if the gods are silent, then maybe he is right. The human priest stopped at the base of the temple steps. He placed his staff against the stone and looked up at the great doors. The truth waits inside, he said. And with those words, the nightmare deepened, for the temple's heart had not been opened in centuries, and no alien had ever dared to enter. The temple doors, tall and black as midnight, groaned under the weight of silence. For centuries, no alien hand had dared to push them open. Legend said those who entered never returned. The gods demanded sacrifices outside, never inside. Cross that threshold was madness, was death, was forbidden beyond words, and yet the human priest stood there now. His staff rested lightly in his hand, his eyes calm but unyielding. Behind him, the city gathered, the people whispering, trembling, waiting. Their high priestess lay burned and broken, their council shaken, their faith cracked. The alien girl stood among the crowd, her chest tight, her lips dry. Every part of her wanted to run, to close her eyes, to forget this nightmare. But she could not. Something inside her needed to see what would happen next. The priest raised his hand and touched the ancient doors. A heavy boom rolled across the city as the stone groaned. Dust rained down. The carvings of gods etched across the surface began to glow, not with holy light, but with a sickly green fire. The crowd screamed. The gods awaken, someone shouted. He has doomed us all. But the priest's voice cut through the panic. Calm, steady, heavy. No gods awaken, only shadows. The doors opened. A wave of cold air rushed out, darker than night, sharper than knives. The people stumbled back, clutching their heads, their hearts pounding with unseen fear. The alien girl gasped, her knees almost giving way. She felt it tan. Ancient presence, thick and heavy, pressing into her bones. And then came the sound. Not voices, not words, but whispers. Thousands of whispers crawling across the courtyard, slithering into every ear. They spoke in tones too faint to understand, yet strong enough to freeze the soul. The people wailed. Some fell to the ground, clawing at their ears, begging for silence. The soldiers dropped their weapons, eyes wide with terror. Even the strongest warriors shivered like children. The alien girl clutched her head, trying to block out the whispers. But they sank deeper, sliding into her thoughts. They showed her visions, blood sacrifices, chains, endless screams. She saw the truth her people had hidden for centuries. Their gods were not protectors. They were parasites, feeding on fear, growing strong on suffering. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to vomit. She wanted to run. But she could not move. The human priest stepped forward into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, desperate, angry. Shapes began to crawl from the shadows, forms that twisted and bent. Half beast, half spirit, eyes glowing with hunger. They were the gods her people had worshipped. But stripped of illusions, they looked like nightmares made flesh. The crowd screamed louder. Some fell to their knees, crying prayers. Others turned to flee. But none could ignore what they saw. The alien girl's heart pounded as the first creature lunged at the priest. Its jaws stretched wide, filled with black fire. The priest did not move. He simply lifted his staff and spoke. "Be still." The beast froze midair. Its body twisted, writhing as if crushed by invisible chains. A terrible shriek tore from its throat, echoing across the city. And then it turned to dust, scattering into the wind. The others followed. One by one, the shadow gods lunged. One by one, the priest spoke, calm and steady, his words cutting deeper than any blade. Each creature fell, bound, shattered, undone by his voice. The people could not believe their eyes. Their gods, their mighty, feared, eternal gods, were being destroyed by a single man. The girl's body shook. Her throat was dry, but her mind screamed, "This is impossible, impossible." Yet, it's happening. The last of the creatures shrieked, its body larger than the rest, towering over the priest. Its voice roared, shaking the temple walls. "You cannot destroy us, human. We are eternal." The priest raised his staff. His eyes burned with conviction. "Nothing built on lies is eternal." He struck the ground. A shockwave burst from his staff, tearing through the courtyard. The great beast screamed, split apart by light that burned brighter than suns. Its shadowy form ripped in two, then shattered into nothing. The temple shook, its carvings crumbling, its walls cracking as the power of false gods collapsed. The whispers ended. The silence that followed was deeper than death. The people stared in horror and awe. The priest lowered his staff, his breathing steady. His robe was torn. Dust clung to his skin, but his eyes remained calm. The alien girl fell to her knees. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Tears burned her eyes. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. Her gods were not gods. They were monsters. And the human had destroyed them. But terror remained, because if he could destroy their gods, what else could he do? The people whispered again, louder this time, their voices trembling. He is not a man. He is a nightmare. He is the end of all we knew. The priest turned, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. For the first time, his calm eyes burned with something sharper, something almost terrifying and yielding conviction. You feared? Shadows, he said. You worshipped chains. Now you are free. But the girl knew freedom was not what the people felt. They felt fear. They felt emptiness. And she too was caught in it, because when the gods died, so did everything they had. Believed, and the human priests, their nightmare was all that remained. The city had fallen silent after the temple clash. No bells rang, no chants rose to the sky. The people stayed inside their homes, too afraid to speak, too shaken to even pray. For the first time in centuries, their gods had not answered. And for the first time they realized maybe those gods never would. But the silence did not bring peace. It brought emptiness. It brought fear of a different kind, the fear of truth. The alien girl walked the deserted streets, her mind burning with questions. Every corner whispered reminders of what she had seen. The gods, broken into dust. The high priestess, powerless. The chains, shattered like glass. And the human priest, standing tall with nothing but his staff and his calm voice. Her people hated him. Some whispered he was a demon, a destroyer, sent to end their world. Others whispered he was a savior, the one who had freed them from false gods. But the girl did not know what to believe. She only knew one thing. She could no longer ignore him. She found him outside the city, near the ruins of an old watchtower. He was alone, sitting on a stone, his staff leaning against the wall, his book open on his lap. He looked tired, but his eyes were steady, his presence heavy with calm strength. Her legs shook as she approached. Every step felt like a betrayal. Of her people, her faith, her family. But she could not stop. You, her voice cracked. Why are you here? Why did you come? The priest lifted his eyes. He did not smile, did not frown. His voice was as calm as the desert wind. Bring truth, to break chains. The girl's chest tightened. But you destroyed everything we believed. Do you understand what you've done? Without the gods, we are nothing. We are lost. His gaze did not waver. You are not lost. You are free. But freedom is heavy. Most fear it. Her hands trembled. She thought of her mother, still praying. In the corner of their house, she thought of the soldiers, their weapons useless. She thought of the children crying at night, begging the gods to return. Then why me? She asked suddenly, her voice sharp, desperate. Why do you look at me as if I matter? I am no priestess. I am no leader. I'm just a girl. The priest closed his book and rested his hand on it, because you watched. You did not turn away. You sought truth when others ran. And now you must choose. Her heart dropped. Choose what? Choose who you will follow, he said softly. Fear or truth? The word struck her harder than any blade. Fear or truth? To stay with her. People meant clinging to lies. To walk with him meant abandoning everything she had ever known. The night grew darker. The wind carried the faint cries of the city. The girl's eyes filled with tears. If I choose you, they will hate me. They will call me traitor. They will cast me out. The priest's voice was steady. Yes, truth is never loved at first. It burns before it heals. She looked at him, trembling. "And if I do not choose you? Then you will live in chains," he said simply, "but you will call them prayers." The girl's breath caught. His words were sharp, merciless, but they rang with weight. She thought of the temple fire bending to his voice. She thought of the false gods, twisted shadows, feeding on their fear. She thought of the silence that had followed their destruction. Her tears fell. "I don't know what to believe anymore." The priest rose slowly, taking his staff in hand. He stepped closer, his eyes calm but unyielding. "Then believe your eyes. Believe what you saw. Shadows pretending to be gods, lies wrapped in gold, and the chains you felt inside yourself breaking. That is truth." Her chest ached. For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the whisper of the wind. Finally, her voice came, trembling but clear. "Then, I choose truth." The words left her lips like a knife cutting through her own soul. She knew the cost. She knew the world she grew up in had ended the moment she said it, but she could not take it back. The priest nodded once, no joy, no triumph, only quiet understanding. "Then walk with me. For the path ahead is darker than anything you have known, but only through darkness will we find the light." The girl wiped her tears, her body shaking but her heart strangely steady. She stepped forward, standing beside him. She had crossed the line. She had chosen. From the city walls, unseen eyes watched. Whispers would soon spread. "The girl has joined. Him. One of us has chosen the nightmare." But in her heart, she knew it was not nightmare she had chosen. It was freedom. And freedom, she realized, was the scariest thing of all. The city no longer belonged to its gods. Their shrieks had been silenced, their shadows broken into dust. But silence did not bring peace. The silence was heavy, like a wound left open. People hid in their homes, unsure whether to grieve or to celebrate. For centuries they had prayed, obeyed, and feared. Now there was nothing left to kneel to. And yet, in the center of that emptiness, the human priest stood. His staff was steady, his book pressed against his side. His presence carried the weight of something larger than the city, larger than any temple. He had broken the chains. But the people still did not know if he was their savior or their destroyer. The alien girl walked beside him, her head lowered, her heart heavy but steady. She had made her choice. She had chosen truth. But she knew the cost. Her people's eyes followed her with hatred, with betrayal, with fear. Some whispered she was cursed. Others whispered she was lost. But the girl no longer cared. Seeing the truth, she could never return to the lies. The priest stopped at the steps of the temple once more. The doors now hung open, their carvings broken, their glow gone. Behind them stretched the great hall, cracked and empty. The sacred fire reduced to nothing but cold ash. The people gathered at a distance, too afraid to come closer, yet too desperate to turn away. Their voices trembled across the courtyard. What will he do now? Will he burn the temple? Will he build his own gods? The high priestess, her robe burned and her crown broken, was carried out by guards. Her voice was weak but sharp, filled with venom. "You think you have won, human? But without gods, we are nothing. You have killed our faith. You have killed our soul." The priest turned his gaze toward her. His eyes were calm, but his voice struck like thunder. "I did not kill your soul. Your false gods did. They fed on your fear, and you gave them power. Now they are gone, and what remains is yours to claim your true self." The words rippled through the crowd, sharp and heavy. Some bowed their heads in shame. Others shook with anger. But all of them listened. The alien girl stepped forward, her hands trembling. "What happens now?" she whispered, almost too soft to hear. The priest looked at her, his expression steady. "Now the truth is revealed." He raised his staff and struck it against the temple floor. The sound boomed like a drum, echoing through every corner of the city. The ground shook, the air cracked with unseen power. The walls of the temple trembled, stones splitting, carvings collapsing. The grand roof split open, light flooding into. The sacred hall, for the first time in centuries, the people cried out, some falling to their knees, others fleeing in terror. The alien girl shielded her eyes but did not run. Inside the broken temple, something was revealed. Beneath the shattered altar, hidden deep within the stone, lay a vast pit. The people gasped. It always believed it was a holy chamber, a place where prayers reached their gods. But the truth was far worse. Bones. The pit was filled with bones. Countless bones of their own kind, men, women, and children, sacrificed through the centuries. Skulls stacked upon skulls, skeletons piled high, their silent screams carved into eternity. The crowd wailed in horror. Mothers covered their children's eyes, elders fell, trembling, begging it not to be true. But the truth was undeniable. Their gods had not blessed them. Their gods had devoured them. The priest's voice rose above the cries, calm and unshaken. This is your truth. You were not protected, you were consumed. Your worship did not lift you, it enslaved you. And now the chains are broken. Alien girl fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She had always feared the gods. She had always prayed to them in desperation. Now she saw what her prayers had fed monsters built from the blood of her people. She wanted to scream. But her voice was gone. The high priestess cried out, her voice broken. Lies, this cannot be. The gods gave us life. The priest looked at her, his eyes steady. No, life was always yours. Gods only stole it. The people's cries turned to silence. Some fell into despair, clutching the ground, their world shattered. Others began to rise, their faces filled with rage, not at the priest, but at the lies they had served. The girl looked at the priest, her voice shaking. What happens to us now? Oh, gods! What are we? The priest rested his staff against the broken altar. His eyes swept across the people, his words slow and heavy. Now you must choose. You can cling to shadows or you can walk into the light. The gods are gone. What you become next is in your hands. The silence that followed was unbearable. The people shifted, uncertain, lost. But for the first time in their history, they were not kneeling. They were standing. The alien girl rose to her feet, her body weak, but her heart strong. She turned to her people, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. We are free. Her words broke the silence like dawn breaking the night. The people looked at her, their eyes wide. Some wept, some shouted. No. But in that moment they knew the truth could no longer be buried. The human priest placed his hand on her shoulder. For the first time, his expression softened, almost like a faint smile. You chose truth. Now so must they.
Oh.
The girl's heart pounded. She knew the road ahead would be hard, filled with fear, anger, and struggle. But she also knew the chains were gone, and she would never bow to shadows again. The revelation had come. The nightmare was over. Or perhaps it had only just begun.